Today, we're talking about estate planning and why the people who are the best in the world at building wealth are often some of the worst when it comes to protecting it. Are you a business owner who spent the last 2 decades building a massive amount of wealth? And now you're wondering, how am I going to pass this to the next generation? How am I going to avoid taxes? How am I going to make sure that I don't screw my kids up when they do get the money? If that's you, you're in the right place. And this could be the most important video you watch all year. I know this because I spent my entire career on the other side of the table, helping business owners walk through the most important financial decision of their entire financial life, the handoff to the next generation. I've done this for hundreds of business owners, founders worth north of $100 million. The crazy part is, for these founders, the hard part isn't building the wealth, it isn't exiting the business, it's deciding, what am I going to do next? And chances are your post-exit life is just as chaotic as your pre-exit life. There's always a fire to put out, there's always a quarterly report to get to, and chances are you're still motivated to get your estate planning done, but you don't know where to start because you don't have an advisor who knows these systems and processes for founders that have net worths north of $50 or $100 million. So if you're a founder who wants to know that real estate planning system from someone who's actually walked in your shoes, well, this is the video for you. Let's dive in. Let me set the stage. You've just had an exit that has changed your life forever. You've gotten $100 million. Post-tax, you're going to get $80 million. And now you're trying to decide, well, what do I do with this $80 million? Because chances are, if you had a business that was worth $100 million, probably already independently wealthy, meaning that the $80 million is really nice to have. You'd much rather have it than not have it. But it likely is not going to dramatically change what you're doing in your day-to-day. You might buy a new house, might buy a new boat, some property, but your day-to-day is probably not changing. And this is where founders start to settle in and realize, if I'm not going to spend it, what am I going to do with it? And those are the two questions that often get brought up when we meet with founders and then we start talking about the system for estate planning. Number one, what am I going to pay in estate taxes? And number two, how do I transition this money to the next generation without screwing them up? The reality is, giving somebody a lump sum for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars is a really tall task. It is very difficult to drop that in somebody's lap on a random Tuesday without them knowing and expect it not to change them fundamentally. The great thing is the system that we're going to walk through here is going to look at those two questions. How do we mitigate estate taxes? And how do we structure the estate plan in a way to avoid dropping that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars into their lap and putting them in a situation that they're just set up to fail? And the reality is, if you don't have this system in place, you are setting the next generation up to fail. If you don't want to set up the next generation to fail, you should keep watching this video. Now that you've had your exit, chances are you have a little bit more time to think about this big thing called estate taxes. And if you're thinking about this post-exit, you probably did something wrong in the estate planning process. But oftentimes when founders come to us, they are nearing an exit or have had an exit, and this is where the planning starts. And we start to look at what is our estate tax exposure and our estate tax liability. Now, this is typically how this process goes. We've been working alongside this family for the last 5, 10, 15 years, and now we're in a situation that we've had this liquidity event, they've had time to settle down, and they really start to think, all right, we have got to figure this out because there is this giant chunk of money, $80 million sitting there, and we have got to figure out how we're going to mitigate taxes and how we're going to transition this to the next generation. The reason why they have not gone to see their estate planning attorney is because they don't know the right questions to ask. Their estate planning attorney is talking legalese over their head. They're just hoping that they end up in the right place. Oftentimes when founders come and talk to me, what they start to realize is that having somebody sitting across the table from that estate planning attorney helping to guide the conversation can really help mitigate those estate taxes. When we think about estate taxes, these are going to be taxes that we owe to the federal government or potentially the state government after we pass away. In this example, we have an $80 million estate and we have a $30 million lifetime exemption. Everybody in the US, if you're married, you get a $30 million exemption. So that means that you're only subject to estate taxes on $50 million and you're going to pay 40% on that $50 million, which equates to $20 million. Now, we have this $20 million tax liability. And the first question that we then ask are we comfortable with that tax liability? Now, you might be watching this and think, Luke, that's crazy. How would anybody be okay with a $20 million tax liability? Well, let me explain. For some families, they're fine paying that estate tax liability because they don't want to pull the levers required to minimize those estate taxes. Now, when we think about those levers, typically they come with giving up some sort of control or flexibility. Typically, there are three main levers that we could pull for this family. We could look at buying permanent life insurance and have the life insurance pay for the estate taxes. We could give the money away, but that might mitigate a goal that they might have, which is giving the money to their kids. determined. And then thirdly, we would put this money in irrevocable trust, and then all the growth would happen outside of their estate. But in that irrevocable trust, you're going to give up some rights, and that might not be something that they want to do either. All this to say, whenever you're going down the path and you're trying to minimize those estate taxes, the system that we use is trying to identify what are the things that we know are certain from an estate planning standpoint. Do we know we want to give money away? Do we know we don't want to pay estate taxes? Do we know that we want to give this amount of money to the kids? And if we're not 100% certain, that's okay. We don't have to make any rash decisions today. If you're sitting across from your estate planning attorney and they're telling you that you have to make a decision, I would just encourage you to pause, because you do not have to make any decisions right away. There's nothing wrong with taking it a little bit slower when we're thinking about estate taxes, because oftentimes, like I mentioned just a minute ago, the levers that we're going to pull are oftentimes going to be permanent levers. The two strategies that we're determining between is, number one, do we want to set up irrevocable trusts that are for the benefit of our spouse, or do we want irrevocable trusts that are for the benefit of our kids? And typically the biggest determining factor there is going to be for the irrevocable trusts that are set up for our kids, they're going to know about those trusts. So if you're in a situation where you don't want your kids to know how much money's in that trust until you decide to tell them, those are probably not the best tools. But if you're in a situation where you know you want it to go to your spouse first and then your kids next, those are irrevocable trusts that we'd probably be looking at. So again, to put a bow on this, when we think about estate taxes, we need to know for certain what do we care about most from an estate tax perspective before we make any decisions when it relates to estate taxes, permanent life insurance, or the type of irrevocable trust that we're setting up. Now that we've conquered the estate tax component, the next component is, how do we determine how much money is going to go to our kids? Now, this is one of the most difficult conversations that we have to have with families, and it's so hard to decide how much money you should be giving to your kids. My guiding light when I'm sitting across the table from families and I'm having these conversations is that we need to take baby steps and we need to take an educational approach. If you look at all the data, all the research, when you look at giving money to kids, the biggest determining factor in success and failure is that they have to go out in the world and they have to make their own way. They're going to have to understand what hard work is. They're going to have to understand how hard it is to make $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, $1 million, right? Because you put in the blood, sweat, and tears to put your family in this position. And you need to make sure that the kids also know how hard it is to actually get to that type of financial position. Once that first part has been tackled, typically what we then start looking at is some sort of dip our toe in the water strategy. We're either gifting money outright to the kids, we're either gifting money to trusts for the kids, but we're actually telling them, hey, this money is being gifted to you. Here's what we'd love for it to be used for. Here's how we're thinking about it. Taking steps in the right direction where you're putting some sort of training wheels on it for your kids, but you're starting the process of giving them money with what I call warm hands versus cold hands. After you start that process, you're going to quickly determine, how do my kids handle this money that I'm giving to them? If I give them $30,000, do they immediately go out and tell me that they have $5,000 left in their checking account and need more money? Or do I give them that $30,000 and they say, is there an advisor? Can I talk to your advisor to help invest this money? Because I want to make sure I continue to see it grow. Those are two starkly different ways that I've seen $30,000 be given to kids and it be either used or invested. Once you've taken those baby steps, we really need to start hammering home how much money is the right amount of money to give to the kids after you've passed away. Because as I sit here today, I'm looking at the net worth and we have $80 million, $20 million is going to estate taxes. So that still leaves us roughly $50 million, $60 million that we're going to be able to give to the kids. The way I like to think about this is we want to give the kids enough money to put them in a situation that they are never going to be on the streets. They're going to be financially sound, but make sure that the right guardrails are on these trusts. So we don't have a situation where they can go out and buy Ferraris, buy a Porsche 911 because they want to, and they're doing it with your money as opposed to work that they've done in the past. And now that we've taken that step and we're starting to see a significant amount of money being given to them, we're seeing how they're utilizing it. That's where we have to make that final call, which is, after we pass away, is this money going to go to a foundation? Are we going to pay estate taxes on it? Is it all going to go to the kids? There's no right answer when we think about this type of planning. The best answer is to make sure that we give a lot of thought, time, and attention to the details and making sure that we set this up right on the upfront, but we also leave ourselves a lot of flexibility in the structure so we can tweak it and change it along the way in case those relationships change, in case your desires change for how much money you want to give them. We don't want to be in a position that we have to give the money away because of how we set it up potentially 20, 30, 40, 50 years before you pass away. As you think about those two most important things, number one was the estate taxes. Number two, how do we make sure we don't mess up our kids? And the last thing I would leave you with is make sure that you have a multifamily office in place that has a system to walk you through this entire process. This should not be as simple as making an introduction to an estate planning attorney and telling them, go meet with that estate planning attorney, whatever they recommend, I'm sure it's going to be a great plan for you. They should be sitting in with the room with you. They should be providing ideas. They should be providing guidance on how they've seen this done in the past. If they are not providing those things to you, chances are they don't typically work with founders with net worth 50 or $100 million. So if that's you and you're watching this video and you're thinking, my advisor hasn't done any of that, you need somebody who has a real estate planning system that can help guide you to get a result that's a 10 out of 10 outcome. So if you have any questions around that, in the description below, there's a link to book a call with me. I'm happy to have a quick conversation with you and see if you're a fit for Moment. Thanks.